How do the Seattle Mariners stack up against the AL West? That's coming up on this episode of Bleav in Mariners. What is up, sports fans? What is up, Mariners fans? We're already a few days into spring training, and even though Seattle is a cheap, penny-pinching, talk-out-of-their-asses organization, my excitement, just like yours, I'm sure, is building for the season anyways, despite frustrations from the offseason and stuff like that. We got those bits of nostalgia to keep us diehard fans kind of barely hanging by a thread with that excitement, right? Of course, Ichiro, he's going into the Hall of Fame this summer, going to have his number retired in Seattle, the 51, now going to be hanging up next to Ken Griffey Jr.'s 24, and Edgar Martinez is 11, as well as Jackie Robinson's 42, but you also got Dan Wilson and Edgar in the dugout. By the way, who thought, when these guys were playing, I'm sure there were players and coaches alike that thought, Dan Wilson could be a manager in this league someday. He's just a great guy. He connects with his pitchers well. He's a great commander of the pitching staff, and he's, well-liked around the clubhouse. But who thought in 20 years, 25 years, down the road from their playing career that they would be in the dugout together leading the offensive attack of the Seattle Mariners? But yeah, that bit of nostalgia keeps us here. And now that the players are actually working out in person, we have more than that nostalgia to lean on. We're actually seeing stuff happening. We're seeing Ryan Divish posting those bullpen videos. But now that we're actually there in spring training, the question pops up, how does this 2025 Seattle Mariners team stack up against the rest of the AL West? Welcome on in to this episode of Bleav in Mariners. I'm Jordan Schultz, more affectionately known as Schultzy, a Pacific Northwest talk show host from Portland, Oregon. We'll get into our analysis of the Mariners versus the rest of the AL West here in just a second. We'll also talk about the decision not to bring Mike Blowers back in the announcer's booth if we have time, but we might have to push that to the next episode. Just have so much to talk about with this AL West preview and the analysis of the Mariners versus the other four teams, which all have improved, by the way. And did want to remind everybody out there, got a little bit of a giveaway planned here on Bleav in Mariners. Trying to get to 100 subscribers on my YouTube channel. Going to give away an Andres Muñoz rookie card, signed autograph, Topps Chrome rookie of him. Of course, he was in a Padres uniform when he was a rookie, so that's why that looks that way. But giving that away once we hit 100 subscribers on YouTube. And then when I hit 100 5-star ratings on my Apple Podcasts ratings platform, we're going to be giving away this 2019 Topps Transcendent Edgar Martinez autograph number to 25, a really nice card. And Edgar autographs go for a pretty penny on these nicer cards. So definitely something legitimate for Mariners fans to pine after, and would really appreciate it. Obviously asking for a legitimate effort from you to go and give the podcast a 5-star rating and a comment. And if you are on YouTube, subscribe, like this video, leave a comment on it. I really appreciate it. Helps me grow. I really want to grow the community and not only grow my community, but get involved with all the other communities of the other podcasts, because there really is a great collection of people covering Seattle Mariners baseball. So would love to get in with that. And yeah, giveaways are a great way to grow the audience and do that, and also give back. So hopefully you get in on that. Once again, getting to 100 subscribers, hopefully on YouTube, we'll give away that Andres Muñoz card, and we get to 100 5-star ratings on the Apple Podcasts. Then we will give away that Edgar Martinez Topps Transcendent autograph. All right, we got that business out of the way, so let's dive right into our AL West preview of the Seattle Mariners versus basically a very revamped division here. It's absolutely crazy when you look at how this team compares to the rest of the AL West. Every other team in the division, they were making changes while Seattle sat on their hands for most of the offseason. I made that point in my last podcast. Go listen to it if you missed it. That's Bleav in Mariners, episode 17. But despite that, the Mariners are still near the top of the pack of at least a chance to get into the playoffs or win the division, right? That's most likely because of the strength of their rotation, but we can get into some other reasons for that. So let's take a look, though, at all of these teams' odds to win the division. Then we'll dive a little deeper into looking at some of the other teams in the AL West and looking at their overall odds at making the playoffs. The interesting thing here, like I just said, it's not just really one source. It's actually multiple sources are having a hard time pinning down the winner of the AL West. The Astros, the Mariners, the Rangers all having a shot. I mean, of course, Astros winning 7 of the last 8 AL West division titles. The Mariners, of course, the lone division winner in that stretch of 8 seasons. Or no, I'm wrong. The Mariners, of course, sneaking into the playoffs in one of those years, but the Astros still, getting most of those division titles. I Bleav the only other one that wasn't won by Houston was the Texas Rangers in their World Series here a couple of years ago. But here are the AL West division odds according to Fangraphs as of about a week ago for 2025. You got the Texas Rangers leading it, but pretty close to the other teams at the top here with the Mariners and the Astros. The Rangers have a 33% chance of winning the AL West. The Mariners at a 31% chance, with Houston at a 30% chance. The A's down at 4, and the Angels down at 3. And I actually think that those projections are, I know that these teams aren't great, but they got a lot better on paper. And the A's added some significant pieces that you didn't really expect them to add, regardless if they're in Oakland or Sacramento or Las Vegas. And we can talk about that looking at their roster a little bit and what they did, as well as the Angels. Yeah, despite dealing with Anthony Rendon, despite having to pay him while he's going to be down again with an injury and surgery, they still have a half-competent roster with a couple of young guys that are really good if you pair them with Mike Trout, if you pair them with a Taylor Ward. We'll get into that, but it's pretty crazy to see these teams at the bottom with just a 4 and 3% chance. And I think that this division is going to be one of the weirdest divisions and one of the most competitive divisions in baseball, just because of the fact that all these other teams added and the Mariners simply did not. But I'm not trying to bitch about that. I'm just trying to look at the comparison of them with the rest of the division. So really quickly, Seattle will start. We've got some projections from Fangraphs and Baseball Prospectus here. Wanted to look at a couple of different sources. Of course, 2024, the Mariners were second in the AL West. We'll just take a look at them quickly before we move to the other teams here and use these Baseball Prospectus numbers and Fangraphs numbers to set up the rest of the division. But in 2025, the Mariners are projected by Baseball Prospectus to get just over 86 wins, 86.1 wins, and they have 57.5% playoff odds with that 86 projected wins number. Fangraphs at 84 wins has the Mariners at 56.6 playoff odds, or percent playoff odds, excuse me. And if you look at the rest of the AL West really quickly, just Fangraph odds, they've got the Rangers sitting at 85 wins, just 1 win above the Mariners, and the Astros also sitting at 84 wins, along with the Mariners, as well as the Athletics and the Angels, both sitting at 76 wins. It just seems like, at least according to Fangraphs, this division is going to be pretty close, and they're having a hard time pinning down who's going to come out on top. And, you know, the Mariners, if they can repeat 2024 rotation-wise, if they can lean on their strong bullpen, I mean, they're going to be able to, I would say, like, even with their hitters crapping the bed most of the season last year, the fact that they were still able to compete, you know, at the end of the season, if they turn around and have a half-decent season at the plate, yeah, then these Fangraphs projections don't look too crazy. They got to lean on that starting rotation again, though, and they've got to have a repeat of that. 3.38 ERA, leading the majors in that last year. They kept opponents batting like 220. Their strikeouts to walk ratio was 4.81, a 1.03 whip. I mean, these are elite numbers, and they've got to repeat that. And you can't depend on 1 through 9, as I said in the last podcast here on Bleav in Mariners. You can't depend on every single one of those things cashing. You depend on a few, but you can't depend on a lot. And hopefully the starting rotation repeating its performance is one of the things that you can depend on. And with 4 of these guys under the age of 28, obviously outside of Luis Castillo, Brian Wu, Bryce Miller, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, which all 5 of these guys can be aces on other teams. Yeah, the Mariners still have that elite rotation. They've got a great bullpen that they're going to lean on as well. We'll get into this more here in the next couple of episodes of Bleav in Mariners, but Andres Muñoz obviously coming back as the closer. You got Trent Thornton there, has really established himself as a deep bullpen piece. Troy Taylor, I think, is going to be an elite setup guy here in Major League Baseball, possibly a closer someday. You got the lefties of Saucedo and Gabe Spire. The Mariners added a couple of pieces. I think Hagen Danners. I hope I'm saying Hagen. I don't know if it's Hagen or not, but they added Danner in the offseason as well. Got a couple other of invitees to spring training that are trying to revamp their careers. I see Drew Pomeranz on the NRI list. So there are many pieces here that the Mariners can play with in their bullpen and hopefully keep things running there. But this is, once again, the projections after re-signing Jorge Polanco and signing Donovan Solano and doing nothing else are that the Mariners have a chance along with the Astros and Rangers, but really the same chance as them, no more of a chance than them really, and the Rangers seem to be the ones at the top of this projection for both Baseball Prospectus and Fangraphs. The Mariners do have a shot with this not revamped lineup. I mean, so yeah, that rotation obviously going to allow them to contend, and it'll be exciting as well. I didn't even mention reliever Matt Brash. Once they get him back, the bullpen is going to be so much stronger, but can these guys hit? Can Victor Robles hit at an MVP-like level or an all-star level? Can Julio get back to an MVP-type level? Can Cal Raleigh, who's not a three-hitter really on any other team in Major League Baseball, be the stud that they need him to be? And Randy Arozarena, not a four-hitter, but that's what the lineup projects them out to be, putting him at four. He's not really a four-hitter anywhere else in Major League Baseball, at least for star teams, or teams filled with stars, excuse me. So can the Mariners play above their station? I mean, it gets back to like, I hope they can, but hope in one hand, spit in the other. Tell me which one fills up first after an offseason filled with a lack of any significant additions, with Polanco being basically your most significant one, a guy that was already on the roster. There are still many questions for the Mariners offense, but you look at the other teams in this division, not as many questions regarding their offenses, and that is where it gets a little bit scary for Seattle. And obviously this is kind of where you look at like the Mariners having the scales tipped on the pitching side and pretty much every other team in the division having the scales tipped on the hitting side. The Rangers, of course, recent World Series winners in the last couple of seasons. They are projected, at least by Baseball Prospectus, to get 89.6 wins. So that would, of course, put them way above by a couple of other wins over the Astros and Mariners, way above the other teams at the top of the AL West. 79.2% playoff odds. And then Fangraphs at 85 wins and a 58.6% playoff odds projection. And like I said, Fangraphs also has them above the Astros and the Mariners, but just by a game. And the Baseball Prospectus projection has them a little bit higher. And they are bringing back a lot of their guys that they had last year. Of course, Nathan Eovaldi, big reason that they had success at starting pitcher. And he really helped kind of balance a rotation out that had no consistency. There was the hope that DeGrom was going to be able to perform before he got injured. They obviously had to give up on a bunch of other guys that they brought in. Max Scherzer was not a great addition for them. And, too much money being spent on the rotation at one point essentially forced them to kind of go cheap this year. I know that the Texas Rangers have spent a lot of money, but essentially bringing back Nathan Eovaldi and bringing in Jock Peterson to replace the production of first baseman Nathaniel Lau, as well as Jake Berger. Outside of a couple of other relief pitchers, you're looking at basically a collection of pitchers here on the Rangers that, besides Eovaldi and DeGrom, kind of a ragtag group of guys. You got John Gray, who's been around for a while in Major League Baseball, then Cody Bradford and Tyler Mahle. And then you also have rookie pitchers, Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter. They're going to be hanging around for depth options at starting pitcher. But really, that's not the strong point of the Rangers. The Rangers' strong point is, of course, their infield. And, I guess if you can pair their outfield, which struggled a little bit last year. Of course, Adolis Garcia had a pretty bad regression in 2024 as compared to his 23 season. But you've got a young Evan Carter out there. You've got a young Wyatt Langford out there. If the Mariners had those prospects, I'd be salivating over them. I think they're going to be very good. And then obviously with their infield of Simeon and Corey Seager, and now Josh Young and Jake Berger over at first base. And Jock Peterson coming in, taking over basically all the at-bats that Nathaniel Lau was getting last year. I see the Rangers offense probably set up to be a little bit better than it was last season. But Berger, as compared to Nathaniel Lau, probably a bit worse. If you're looking at just like Jock Peterson compared to Nathaniel Lau, I would say that it's pretty even. But Jake Berger, we'll see what he can do in a Rangers uniform. But, he's kind of one of those guys that you're like, who is Jake Berger? He played for the Miami Marlins his whole career so far, and not everybody watches Marlins games, so you don't really know who this guy is. We'll see if he does well under the lights. But yeah, after their World Series in 2023, A big 12-win drop-off last season, but hopefully their offense can get a little bit better, and hopefully their pitching staff, after having the 6th highest ERA and the 5th most home runs given up per inning, can improve. But like I said, it's going to be a bunch of ragtag guys. But hey, these projections say that Texas is going to improve and they are going to win the division. God, just kind of makes me mad that that's actually the case, because it doesn't seem like Texas got that much better. They made a couple of trades. They tinkered with a couple of things. It seems like their rotation really isn't that great. It's okay. And this is what the Mariners basically are being looked at as second best to in this AL West. It's just absolutely frustrating. All right, next up, let's get to the Houston Astros. 7 of the last AL West titles, or 7 of the last 8, AL West titles for Houston. 88-64 in 2024, first in the AL West. They are projected in 2025, by Baseball Prospectus anyways, to have 87 wins with a near 65% chance at making the playoffs. Fangraphs, like I said, gives them an 84-win season, 53.6% chance at making the playoffs. Big addition at first base. They added Christian Walker in that trade with the Chicago Cubs for Kyle Tucker. They added Isaac Paredes, but they did, as I just said, lose Kyle Tucker in that trade to the Cubs, losing Alex Bregman via free agency. Did not want to bring him back. The Red Sox recently getting him. They also moved on from Yusei Kikuchi and Justin Verlander at the starting pitcher spot. But it was, still, I would say a halfway decent winner for Houston because of the additions that they made. Yeah, people questioned them trading Kyle Tucker. You wonder why any team like that competing for a division title, still competing for World Series, apparently would trade a great talented player like that. I'm going to go with Occam's razor here, and it seems like the simplest explanation is the truest. And guy like Kyle Tucker, guy like Alex Bregman, you would think that Espada just didn't want them around the clubhouse anymore, right? Bregman, it's a little bit easier not to bring him back because you got to get that contract signed, but to specifically make a move to get Kyle Tucker out, and then with their GM recently coming out and saying, I understand that fans are confused by that decision, but trust me, I want to win. It makes you wonder what's going on in the Houston clubhouse. And it really is a time of change and turnover. And that's kind of why you see, it's an active winter for them, but they still come out looking pretty decent. And I did forget to mention they lost Ryan Presley, their closer, as well via free agency. But like I said, they do have good pieces to plug in. That kid, I think his name is like Wesneski, Wesneski that they got in that trade from the Cubs, involving Kyle Tucker, is a piece that they're going to be able to plug in to the rotation, which along with him, you've got Framber Valdez, Hunter Brown, Ronel Blanco, and then Spencer Spaghetti. His real name is Spencer Arrighetti, but I like to call him Spaghetti. But Valdez and Brown really good at the top of the rotation. Of course, you do have some questions there with Wesneski, the young kid. Arrighetti, up and down. And they don't really have depth beyond that. Blanco, a decent one as well. But once again, the starting rotation, it's outside of 1 and 2, decent to kind of okay. And without any depth, the Houston Astros leaning on those 5 guys to stay healthy. And then you look at their batters. Jose Altuve, not sure if we're going to see him at second base or in left field. You might see Dubon playing some outfield. You might see him moving to second at this point. Not quite sure. But then you got Paredes. You got Alvarez still at the designated hitter spot. Christian Walker, so frustrating to see him in an Astros uniform as opposed to a Mariners uniform, but I digress. That obviously wasn't going to happen for him. I get it, but damn, if the Mariners had Christian Walker, like this win projection for the AL West would look so much different. But then you look, Christian Walker down to Yainer Diaz, and then Jeremy Pena, former World Series MVP, Chas McCormick, Dubon, and then Jake Myers rounding out the lineup. I'm still looking at that lineup as a Mariners fan, and I see a lot of guys that starting pitchers are going to have to work hard to get through. So definitely see why Houston is up there with Seattle, despite, I would say, a weaker back half of the starting rotation. But yeah, they got Jordan Alvarez. They got Christian Walker. They still have elite hitters in that lineup that give pitchers legitimate nightmares. So yeah, the Mariners are going to be having to fight through that, and I'm not sure that they're going to be able to top that, especially if they don't hit themselves. It's just super frustrating that they are basically like literally the exact same projection as the Houston Astros, at least according to Fangraphs, 84 wins apiece for them. Although it does, I think, say that the Mariners would win that tiebreaker. So yay, but we're talking about so many unknown scenarios at this point. And then the two teams said to be at the bottom of the AL West, the Angels and the Athletics. I've actually got some fears about both of them, and here's why. Mike Trout, I do think, can be healthy at some point if they just allow him to hit. They really shouldn't continue to play him in the outfield. But the Angels, along with Mike Trout, along with a really good collection of young guys in Taylor Ward, Joe Adell was a Mariners killer. He wasn't great average-wise, but every time he played against Seattle, he seems to kill him, along with a Zach Neto, along with a Logan O'Hoppe. I mean, also their first baseman, Nolan Shanwell. Like, they legitimately have almost a 1-9 lineup. I know that Anthony Rendon isn't playing, but hey, they went and grabbed Yohan Moncada for $5 million to fill that gap at third base. And randomly, this is because I believe Zach Neto is going to open the season on the disabled list, or excuse me, the injured list after he had shoulder surgery this offseason. They went and grabbed Tim Anderson to fill up those at bats. So we'll see if he can revive his career in Major League Baseball. But then along with the addition of Jorge Soler in the offseason, you brought in Yusei Kikuchi and Kyle Hendricks to top your rotation. They actually look like a more complete team than they have in a long time in Los Angeles. Tyler Anderson, Kikuchi, Jose Soriano, Kyle Hendricks, you're 1 through 4. And then you've got a kid basically sitting there at 5, or a couple of other kids that could be competing for the 5th starter spot for Los Angeles. And then leading off, Taylor Ward, Luis Rengifo, second base, batting second, Mike Trout third, Jorge Soler 4th, Shanwell 5th, Logan O'Hoppe 6th, Adell 7th. That's a decent lineup. And I look at that lineup, and I'm not sure the Mariners can beat that lineup every night. I'm sorry, y'all. If you think that the Mariners are going to play at just an absolute top clip 1-9 all season, and none of these other guys are going to have rebound seasons and make it hard for Seattle, and Joe Adell, even despite having a really crappy season, made it hard for Seattle a lot last season, then you're kidding yourselves. This is going to be a tough division to go through. And then rounding it out, the Athletics, good Lord. And by the way, the Angels projections, forgot to state, Baseball Prospectus has them at 77 wins, 10% playoff odds, and Fangraphs has them at 75 wins with 8.7% playoff odds. So, hey, it's 1-10. That ain't nothing. And then finally, the Oakland Athletics, of course, they were 69-93 in 2024. Their 2025 projection from Baseball's Prospectus has them at 70 wins with 1.6% playoff odds. Fangraphs has them at 76 wins with 11.2% playoff odds. So that's the big difference here. It seems like that the percentage change here from Baseball Prospectus to Fangraphs has these teams a little bit closer in chances, especially at the top. And then the Baseball Prospectus rankings has the Rangers way at the top as compared to the Astros and Mariners a few games below them. And then obviously the Angels and then the Athletics basically at the very bottom. Fangraphs thinks that the Athletics, whatever you want to call them, Sacramento, Oakland, Las Vegas, they have a legitimate shot, at least an 11.2% chance at making the playoffs. They grabbed Luis Severino. They signed Jeffrey Springs to add to their rotation. They brought in Gio Urshela. He's a bit of a minor addition, but hey, he's filling up their infielder, and they are already stacked at the plate, guys. They got Butler, they got Rooker, they got Langoliers, they got Bleav. Those names alone, every time I looked at the box score for Seattle, it seemed like, or when Seattle was facing off against Oakland last year, it seems like, yeah, they got their hits. They had their success, even against Mariners starting pitchers. So the Mariners are going to have to fight through a lot of good hitters in this division alone. And then, of course, Severino, J.P. Sears, Jeffrey Springs. They got a couple of kids to add to that rotation as well for Oakland. They are nothing to sneeze at, or excuse me, Sacramento or Las Vegas, whatever you want to call them. And I definitely think that it's going to be a pretty hard-fought season, especially with, the Athletics actually adding to their team, which nobody expected. Maybe the fact that, they gave Brent Rooker an extension, they gave money to Luis Severino, the biggest free agent contract that the Athletics have ever handed out. Maybe they're taking some of that money that they were spending on trying to keep that dilapidated Coliseum going. Maybe they're able now, because they don't have to spend that cash, able to spend that on some hitters, able to spend that on some pitchers. That is a scary thought, because nobody in Mariner land thought that the Mariners were going to have to deal with the Athletics as well through all of this. That's a little freaky, if you ask me. So essentially, once again, both projections here have the Rangers at the top of the divisions. Baseball Prospectus has them a bit higher above the Mariners and the Astros. The Mariners and the Astros kind of hanging around there, second or third, and the Athletics and the Angels are at the bottom of the division. The Angels, of course, according to Baseball Prospectus, have a much bigger chance of getting into the playoffs. But hey, Fangraphs has the Athletics at an over 11% chance. So we're going to see how this AL West stacks up. I think that this info just kind of shows you that we really don't know what's going to happen. And I think it's obvious that the Mariners are going to need to improve significantly at the plate from last year to compete in this weird division. But the people that are paid to make those projections actually think that's going to happen. I hope they're right. I really hope they're right. All right, we're out of time here on this episode of Bleav in Mariners. Next episode, I really do want to get into why no one's talking about Mike Blowers not coming back in 2025. Also going to take a look at the Mariners bullpen and whether or not Alex Bregman signing with the Red Sox is a good thing for the Mariners. Maybe they can pry Tristan Casas away still. Maybe. Oh, God. Can't believe that that's the hope and a prayer that I've got to put out there. But that's where we're at, Mariners fans. Make sure you give the podcast a 5-star rating and review. And please subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you're watching it. Like the video as well. Leave a comment. Would love to interact with you on all my socials. Hit me up on YouTube or on X, On the Air Jordan. That's On the Air, Jordon. And make sure you check in. We're going to be announcing once we hit 100 subscribers on YouTube and 100 5-star ratings on Apple Podcasts, what we're going to do for the giveaways of the Andres Muñoz and Edgar Martinez autographed baseball cards. Appreciate everybody. Stick around. We've got so much more content coming up through the season. But until we talk next time, make sure you keep those tridents up and stay safe, Mariners fans. See you soon.